Canon's camera releases for the past few years have been surprisingly controversial. They're usually met with a lot of criticism and dislike, but you know what? I friggin' love Canon cameras unapologetically. And the EOS R, which I'm filming this on right now, is probably the most interesting release from Canon of the past year, and it's also their first entry into the full-frame mirrorless market. And as usual, as I found with other Canon cameras, when they're released, they're usually heavily criticized, and then as time goes on and you actually get to use them, they're very good, reliable tools when you're using them practically in the real world. So now that I've had my EOS R for a month, these are the top 5 underrated features that I think really make it stand out among its competition. Number 1, video bit rates. When Canon was developing the EOS R, they said they had a couple specific goals in mind, mainly being high specs and high image quality. And they really achieved it and put that into this camera. And even though I'm someone who's never really paid much attention to video bit rates, the EOS R has some really impressive video specs that deserve a lot more attention. 1080p video is recorded at 180 megabits per second. Just for reference, the 6D Mark II and other cameras like the A7III record HD at 60 megabits per second. So it's 3 times the bit rate of a lot of other cameras in its, line of competition. When it comes to 4K, there's a lot of love for cameras like the Sony A7III, which even though I'm a Canon person, it's hard to argue that this is a really incredible camera that's pretty much a direct competitor to the EOS R. And in general, people love the 4K out of this camera, but the 4K from the A7III is recorded at 100 megabits per second, whereas 4K from the EOS R is recorded at a whopping 480 megabits per second. It's insane. It means you get these massive file sizes, but it also means that the image quality is incredible. So it's a super capable camera in terms of bit rates, and Canon deserves a lot of love for putting that into such a small, compact device. Number 2, the LCD screen. I've said it before in other videos, but having a fully variable LCD screen that lets you see it from any angle and position you can think of is pretty much something that all cameras should have at this point. Canon is pretty good with it, Panasonic's pretty good with it, but the EOS R, not only does it have a fully variable LCD, but it's also a really nice screen. I was kind of shocked when I saw this. It's bigger than the average Canon LCD display, it's got a little more resolution, it's very bright, it's very crisp, and it's also, as a touchscreen, really sensitive. It doesn't feel like a typical kind of annoying to use touchscreen. It's very fluid and responsive, much more like a smartphone than a typical camera display. And I'll keep saying it that at this point, every camera should just come with a fully variable LCD. I know that the Sony A7III is a wonderful camera, and I know Sony makes good products, but this is an objectively terrible design. What even is this? Whoever approved this design should be sentenced to a lifetime of using nothing but a Mavica and a 3.5-inch floppy disk.
With the new digital Mavica from Sony, you can take your photos on a normal floppy disk and see them on your computer.
Number 3, battery life. So with these powerful sensors and electronic viewfinders and high bit rates, mirrorless cameras consume a lot of power. And they also sit at this interesting intersection because while they consume a lot of power, a lot of companies and a lot of consumers want their cameras to be smaller and more compact. So when the camera is smaller, it usually can't use that big of a battery, and so you end up with a high power consuming camera that uses a smaller battery. The EOS R uses Canon's typical LPE6 batteries, and these batteries last a really, really long time. So even though the EOS R's battery life isn't quite comparable to a traditional DSLR like the 6D, it's really, really close. It's definitely the best battery life of any mirrorless camera I've ever used. And even though it's not quite on par with a traditional DSLR, a mirrored DSLR, it's good enough that I actually don't notice the difference. I don't find myself checking or charging the battery any more than I did on my normal camera. So that has been a total dream, the fact that I can have all these features and not have to worry constantly about power. Number 4, the sensor cover. Canon put a lot of thought into their first full-frame mirrorless camera. Since mirrorless cameras don't have mirrors in front of the sensor, which can help protect them from dust and dirt, as anyone who owns one knows, they can really be dust magnets. And most mirrorless cameras, when they're turned on, when the lens is off, they just leave the sensor exposed. Canon implemented a feature into the shutter where when you power off the EOS R or you detach the lens, it automatically, very quickly closes the shutter to protect the sensor, which makes it much easier to protect it from dust and dirt and scratches and all of those things that can ruin that big, beautiful sensor. And it also makes it easier for you to switch lenses when you're out, not in a controlled environment, filming or taking pictures. Although it is really important to remember that the shutter will only automatically close when you detach something from the camera's RF mount. If you're using an EF adapter and you take the EF lens off of the adapter, the shutter won't come down to cover the sensor. So it's really important to remember that that protection only happens automatically when you remove a lens or an adapter directly from the camera's RF mount. And number 5 for EOS R underrated features is lens compatibility. So the EOS R and the R series introduced the new RF mount and RF lenses. There are 6 options in the RF series right now, and Canon keeps adding more and more as time goes on. But with the EF adapter, it gives you almost 60 options of EF lenses and almost 20 options of EFS lenses. So you can use RF, EF, and EFS lenses, which is something like more than 80 Canon OEM lenses with this camera. And then if you put that on top of course, all the third-party lenses like Sigma and Tamron, basically with the EOS R, if there's a focal length and an aperture that you're looking for, there is probably a lens out there that combines the two. And what would this video be without a couple bonus features, some honorable mentions? First bonus feature is touch and drag to focus. Since the EOS R does introduce some new ergonomic designs for Canon and some traditional features like scroll wheels and joysticks have either been moved or eliminated, they did add in a few cool things. One of them being that when you're using the electronic viewfinder, you can drag your finger around the LCD screen, which is just dark. It's turned off, it's blank, but if you move your finger around it, you can actually control the focus point of the camera, both in photo and video modes. This has actually become really, really helpful to me, and you can even use it in video to shift focus live. So if you want to do manual focus tracking or you want to do like a smooth rack focus, you can do that just by touch and drag on the LCD screen. And there are a ton of options within the camera to adjust how it works, which parts of the display will be sensitive to touch and which others won't. So if you just want the bottom right or the right side or the left side of the screen, whatever works for you, that's what you can set for touch and drag focus. It's a super cool feature that I haven't seen anywhere else. And finally, a great feature of this camera is its customization. So with all of these new controls, Canon tried to put what they think is best for each of them, but that might not be what works best for you. So pretty much every dial, every button, every switch on this camera can be remapped to whatever you need it. And you can change those settings for both photo and video mode. So it's really worth digging through the camera's menus and really customizing everything and revisiting those as you use the camera more, so that way it suits your needs perfectly. I've honestly had a lot of fun with the EOS R. I really didn't expect it to be such an enjoyable camera to use. If you missed it, I did put together a full in-depth review on the R and why I chose it as an addition to my 6D Mark II. I've also been using pretty much exclusively the Sigma 24mm 1.4. If you're not familiar with that lens, it's pretty much my favorite prime lens and I highly recommend it for both photo and video. So check out my EOS R review and my Sigma 24mm lens review.